Hello and welcome to Soul Steps. I'm David Gallagher. I read the story, a fascinating story, of the 7th Marquess of Bristol in the UK, a man named John Harvey. John was born into privilege and aristocracy, wealth, fame, and yet the downward trajectory of his life began at a very early age, really when he was 4 years old and his mother left the family. She went 12 miles away from the family home, and it might as well have been 12,000 miles away to move in with her boyfriend. And there she started another family, got pregnant, had a child. A friend would say that John's mom just never wanted him around because he was, quote, always underfoot. She just didn't care. John's dad was just absent. Didn't care about John, didn't spend time with him. In fact, later in his life, John recounted, he said, "My father never did anything with me. He was an extremely cold man. I was terrified of him because he commanded so much authority. He wasn't really a father, he was a demigod." Another close friend said Victor, John's dad, wanted nothing to do with him. He said John was an embarrassment, that he was simply surplus goods. And in fact, when John went on holiday, it was usually by himself, and a nanny was sent with him to just watch guard over him at some coastal resort. One friend, a man named Guy Saintly, said this. He said that one time he was with John at the family home, and John began confiding in him about his relationship with both his mom and his dad. And Guy recalls, he suddenly burst into tears. I remember feeling desperately sorry for him. He was mixed up and desperately wanted his father's love. I think his father did love John, but had no idea how to show it. John definitely needed help. Well, a prep school classmate, a friend of John's, also remembers that John's dad would many times say he was going to come and visit John on the weekends, and time after time after time, he didn't show up. And on more than one occasion, the next day, a car would show up full of toys or stuff that his dad bought him to just try to pacify him. And this friend of John's said of all the kids he knew that he could think of as they grew up and became adults who might get into trouble or have a difficult time, he said it was definitely John. Well, the story goes on and on. John, at a very early age, began abusing alcohol. He became an alcoholic in his teens, early 20s. That turned to drug abuse. They say that by the time John passed at age 44, from drug and alcohol abuse, some say it could have been AIDS because he contracted that apparently in 1986. But he had so ravaged and destroyed his own body that he could no longer survive. And they believe by the time of his death he had spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 million or more on drugs in his lifetime. He went in and out of prison. He got in trouble in the U.S. and in Australia, prison sentences, and it was terrible. I don't need to belabor this story, but if you're someone who just needs help to know how to be a mom or a dad to your child, ask God to help you. And if you're that child like John who was abused, abandoned, rejected by his parents or her parents, ask God to help you. The scripture says in Psalm 27:10, "Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Proverbs 22:6 is familiar to many people. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And then in Ephesians 6:4, it says, Fathers, do not exasperate, some words are embitter, your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Here's the deal. Whether it's Proverbs 22 or Ephesians 6, it talks about training. There's only one way that you're going to successfully train anyone or anything, and that's by spending time. And unfortunately, too many parents find that they just don't have time for their kids. And if that's you today, if there's a history of that for you, ask God to give you what you need to turn that around. Often we're just the products of our own experience. And if we grew up in a home where we were neglected, ignored, abandoned, oftentimes we don't have the tools in our toolbox to take any skills or experience into our own children when we have them. But ask God to help you spend time with your kids. You know, that word exasperate or embitter is the idea in the original language. Part of it is that you put burdens on your kids and you have expectations on them that they can't fulfill because they don't have the training, they don't have the experience, they don't have the maturity. And so when they're expected and asked to do things that they're not equipped for, and then they fail and get in trouble or meet with your disapproval, it's a recipe for disaster. And that's often when kids give up. They need time. You need time. And if you're that person who just didn't get that time with your parents, just know, according to Proverbs 27:10, that even if your father and mother forsake you, God doesn't. He invites you in to be part of his family. And God, through the scriptures and through fellowship with other believers, can train you in those things that are right and good and kind and healing. And that can all take place through God. Reach out to God today. Ask him to help you, whatever place you find yourself in, and he'll meet you there. Thanks for watching today. If you want to contact us or you need prayer, you can write us at hello@soulsteps.org. And thanks again, as you're able, for remembering us in your giving. God bless you.